We have another round of Blind Guardian talking. We're talking about Nightfall in Middle-earth today, the best album ever. And just go ahead, please.
Yeah. An album about the Silmarillion, but that was not the initial idea, because there were actually two, maybe it was the initial idea, but you also had two other concepts, Merlin and Rheingold. And when it comes to Rheingold, it was based on the book by Stephen Grundy.
Yes.
And we remember when we read about this time, it was initially you thought that Rheingold was a much better story and more easy to tell in a musical concept. So why did you end up with the Silmarillion in the end?
You want to start?
I remember that the first thing I heard when you came, we had already a few songs written, and you came to me and you told me about Rheingold. I didn't know, but you told me about the book and explained me a little bit the story and what your concept would be in a more shortened version. And I really loved the song Rheingold, which became Nightfall later on.
Yeah, it was Rheingold, the first song we composed, or one of the first songs we composed for Nightfall. And I was reading the book, obviously, and then dig deeper into the mythology, and I totally loved it. And I also saw that there were a lot of inspirations Tolkien has taken out of this part of mythology. So I believed it could be something cool for Blind Guardian, at least for the song Rheingold. And when the songs developed, there was that strong feeling, this is, music for a conceptual album. So we started discussing concepts in general, and my favorite topics were still Tolkien and the Silmarillion at that point. It was still the Arthurian epic, which took a big place on imaginations, and then basically, did I say Rheingold already? I don't know. But Stephen Grundy's story was another thing I could imagine to have, been abused for the concept. And then I started writing 3 concepts. And I believe I introduced it to you guys. And by whatsoever reason, I believe that my passion for Tolkien was still stronger than the passion for Stephen Grundy or for any story written about King Arthur. And also my ideas, for the connecting pieces might have been a little stronger. And that was the point when we together decided that it should be the Silmarillion instead of the other 2.
But we were not aware that Rheingold, this awesome chorus part, had to change into Nightfall. And everybody was crying big tears.
Yeah, I remember
Fleming.
Even Fleming, when he sang Nightfall, yes. Finally. And we all said, oh, Rheingold sounded so much better. Hansi, what
it is the better book. It's the much better book.
Is there no Rheingold in Tolkien's story?
The problem I also realized was that the Silmarillion is too much of a book, to be featured in one conceptual album which has a length of maximum 70 minutes. And that created the next problem, because I had to decide for which story I would love to go. And this all happened after the decision. Then, of course, as usual with Blind Guardian, the songs dictate the direction, and they had that battlefieldish attitude somehow. So it was easy to come up with the idea to connect it to the Flight of Mordor. But I always felt like not giving enough tribute to the book by just having this small piece. And at a certain point I also saw I would not even be able to finish this story completely.
Yeah, but it felt very comfortable with songs like Noldor and Blood Tears. From my feeling, Tolkien was the better fit. I think when you brought in Rheingold was at an earlier stage, but then we had these other songs that were more Tolkienish, and it made much more sense to switch over.
I remember the working titles you brought in, and I believe that was after we decided to go for the concept. There was one song which ended up to be Into the Storm, which was called Gollum Speaks, The other one was Frodo Speaks, and that ended up to be When Time Stands Still. So Tolkien wasn't a bad option.
We're all unknown side stories right now.
Yeah, but that also explains the "give it to me" part.
Well,
because that stays.
precious.
So as this was your first concept album, there was another problem with the songs which had to be in another chronological order. So tell us about what problems you had to face there, because you couldn't decide, okay, this will be the first song, this had to be head-to-head in flow.
It was a long discussion and it was pain in the ass at that time because we really were not aware of that from the very first beginning. It was more clear when we worked in the studio on the material and Hansi was writing the final lyrics. Then he asked for decisions which order would be the best, and we were. I remember that it was a long discussion which one would be the opener for the album, only to know which song you start with, and I think that's always the most difficult decision because you want to present the album in the first seconds with a song that is speaking for the whole songwriting, but since the songs were so different, each one of them is kind of unique, it was different to choose one, that you really have the feeling, okay, if you present that song, it gives the right impression of the album. So yeah, that was a long discussion, and once you have this song, which became Into the Storm, and I still think it was a wise decision, after that it becomes easier.
It was easier. There was, in the chronological order of the story and in the logical order, it was just Noldor, which did not fit in at the point where I wanted to have it. It would have been, I think it would have been number 3 on the album. And we felt after Nightfall that would not make a good fit, so I had to play around with it, but since there is that spot in the story, the Silmarillion, where some of the Noldorian people reveal what they have done, it still fitted in there, so even that worked out fine.
And it became a little bit more smooth when we had the narrators, because that was binding.
Yes.
It was binding the songs better, and it was featuring the story flow. So all of a sudden, out of different songs, it became more one piece, and it was getting the story flow. I think that helped a lot that we went for the narrators in the end.
Yeah. But we did that at the very end. It was, again, a very painful process because we were running late as usual in the studio.
What?
And we needed that stuff, so I needed to come up with the words for the narration, and as well needed to find the right people, and that's when Charlie Bauerfeind came in and one more time saved this production by having a guy who was a narrative actor who was able to transfer that stuff. Otherwise I would have been in search forever.
For this album you recorded or started recording 14 songs, and the common thread before is that you always struggle to come up with enough songs. I mean, the creative process and flow must have been amazing, considering that you also did all the interludes.
I believe it was more demanding than on any of the albums before. We had a good flow, that there was no change, and we still were, very convinced about what we were doing, and we had visions, and we knew that even though Imaginations was such a strong album, we would be able to come up with new ideas. But still, the songs are more complicated, and this was an experience we always also made in the songwriting period. We had to spend more time. We mentioned that we were always working in shifts. We were more focused even on songwriting, but if I recall, it was not as easy as it was when we did Imaginations or Somewhere.
It was, for me, it was the same kind of level, only that with the Nightfall I had even more pressure. I felt really the pressure of the imaginations. It was a difficult time, and it was I don't think that it was easy. It was really, really, really hard, that period. And I remember that we had many discussions, and the mood was not always the best between us during the songwriting. We had differences. But anyways, when we had the most problems, we were always finding together with the songwriting. And the creativity kept us together and getting back together as a band always. It was always about the songs in the end. We never lost the focus. And we, of course, if you achieve something good, like we wrote 2-3 songs and you know it's good, you have something there, then slowly you get more confident that you can do it, that you can achieve another good album. And we saw that it was a little bit different from the moods we created. Some songs are a little bit more melancholic, have different moods that you will not find in the imaginations, but still from the melodies and the chorus parts, very, very strong. So we said whatever this album, wherever it is going, when it's done, it will be strong enough to survive the imaginations, and that was for us the most important.
I think it's a better album even. I mean, the diversity on the album is so strong. I cannot recall any of the other albums which gets close to it. And it's a very emotional album. I think this is why so many people fell in love with it. There are people who love Somewhere best, there are people who love Imaginations best, and there are people who love Nightfall best. I belong to the last species. But I really think it is a quite impressive legacy. It just proves we have been very productive, and I do not know where that came from, because as said, I did not feel pressure that was coming later, but I felt it was a very demanding songwriting period. Maybe that's also based on the simple fact that we moved places again. We went into a smaller rehearsal studio situation because the shelter, the luxurious shelter we were in, was closed down. So we had to rent 2 smaller rooms, and we had to build up a studio in there, so everything was narrow and packed. And it did not feel as comfortable as the songwriting for Imaginations did, because we had all this white room and we had a bar, we invited people, had parties, and this was straight working again.
And, man, that explains. For the first time we took more time. We took longer to release the next album.
Yeah, that's true.
So that was the first time we said, okay, no compromises. No compromises. We are done when we are done. We really write as many good songs that we feel we have a complete album. And that was the first time we had that 4-year cycle.
It was
3.
Yeah. 3.
Okay,
And we had forgotten what in between, so we
Okay.
were
It was
very
3
busy.
between Somewhere and Imaginations as well.
yeah, but that was not
Because of the
didn't
accident.
take that didn't take so long. But you can
Yeah.
say like 94 we entered the studio for the Imaginations, and 98 we did Nightfall. So yeah, somehow 3 to 4 years, and it was the first time we took so long. So of course in 3 years songwriting you do more than in 1.5. That's what I wanted to say.
Obviously.
And a thing that only happened once in the Blind Guardian career was that the clothes that you were wearing on the promo photos were inspired by the story, which gave you a kind of image.
What photos are you talking about?
There were no photos. That's a
What was the
drawing.
idea for that, and what do you think about it?
We sometimes believed in what the record company was saying, and they believed in fashion photos, and they had that fashion photographer who came up with the advice to wear medieval clothing, and we all hated the idea, but we did it. And we went to Berlin, and I think it was Berlin-Babelsberg, and found all these clothing, and we had, to dress ourselves as properly as possible. And we did not feel confident about that, and the photos turned out good, to be honest, but we do not like to dress up.
No.
Never ever. We didn't like the Mr. Sandman video. That was something, or this will be something we will talk later on. We did not like this photo session, and we mostly disliked the suit session, which
for
also
opera.
was connected. No, the suit session for Nightfall.
That was one as well.
That was the basic idea. Metallica did a photo shooting with suits, and this is what the record company mainly wanted. To have us, dressing up different than the metal kid was. The clothing a metal kid would wear. So we went there and said, okay, then we do that suit thing. And what they have had was very, 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 very bad fitting suits. From
bad fitting is putting
far
it very
too
nice.
large, and I don't know, they too cheap. And then we had to wear them, and they completely did not fit for none of us.
No.
And we did these photos. Yeah, I had the Hawk, or Buzzard.
And
I
we
don't
had
know what it was.
motorcycle boots with them because they didn't have proper shoes to go
Yeah.
with that. It was ridiculous.
And we completely hated it.
Yeah, I mean, we were really good keeping cliches from us.
Yeah, we were once called.
During all the time, we pushed all cliches away, musical-wise and from our attitude. By that time, with that photo session, we failed. We didn't.
Yeah.
Because this is so much cliche as it can be. Medieval music, medieval band, yeah. Well.
There was that saying that our image is to not have an image, and then the record company was projecting something on us that we were just not.
Exactly.
We are not people to wear medieval stuff. We are not people to run around in suits or anything like that. That's so far out of our comfort zone.
Yep.
And you could see it on the pictures. The picture that ended up on Nightfall is still okay, but you don't feel fine. You
It's not
just
authentic.
Feel,
It's not
it just
authentic
feels
with us.
faking something, and it's just wrong.
But there
Authentic is like
there was a
this,
German magazine, Rock Hard, who loved the photos so much, they asked us to do the same session again. And we did. And
failed again.
These photos even turned out worse.
Well, as all the albums will be re-released soon, there will be 3 additional tracks on the re-release. Can you tell us about them? They have been around now in slightly different versions, and what can people expect?
Well, I mean, Doom has been released on Beyond the Red Mirror, so that is not a new song. But still, we found the original recordings, done by Tom and Oliver Holzwart on bass back then. We always had these songs and never found the time to accomplish them. Back in the days when we did the Nightfall album, we were running out of time as usual, and these songs were not accomplished, and we had to stop recording pieces for the songs at a certain point, because otherwise we would have been far too late. So we just held them back for a later moment that was supposed to be a year later. But even then the songs were not finished, so we still pushed them forwards. And Harvest of Sorrow has been finished somewhere in between Nightfall and Night at the Opera, and has been partly used for a Night at the Opera, but it did not fit into the concept anymore. So it ended up to be a B song on the single, and then there was Silence, and I think it also ended up to be bonus tracks on some of the album versions. But that was never justice for the song. The Tides of War was not finished, Doom was not finished, and we held them back until we rediscovered them when we did Beyond the Red Mirror. We finished them both with Barend on bass and Fredrik Imke on drums, and just decided not to release The Tides of War at that point, and basically Doom ended up on Beyond the Red Mirror. Now, with the opportunity of the re-release of the back program, we just felt it was about the right time to accomplish whatever we have
Now
done.
or never.
Now or never. And to end basically the Nightfall Middle Earth concept completely, because this is how it actually was planned in the beginning.